Hello, welcome. Welcome to WBUR CitySpace. So many beautiful people here today. I'm Stephen Davey, senior producer here, and we have a very special event tonight. I'm loving the farmers market. Did you guys find some stuff? Yeah, good. Okay, good. I'm very happy about all the people that could join us from the market. We're going to reopen the market after this, so don't feel like you're missing out on anything before we get started. So, oh, I'm on page 2 already. Hang on. All these important notes. Okay. As you'll soon wow. Page 3. Okay. Thank you. So before we get started, I do want to make a plug for our newsletter we just launched, and it's all part of this event. You're going to hear why in just a minute. It's called Cooked, and it's all about the search for sustainable eats. Yes, go ahead, give it a yes. Don't applaud me. Barb wrote the whole thing, so you'll meet her in just a minute. It's how you can reduce your impact on climate change. It's also funny, because you'll see Barbara is very funny and loaded with excellent food puns. All written by our moderator today, Barbara Moran. Also, I do want to make a special note. Don't worry, we'll all be done today before the Celtics tip-off, so you're in good hands. So, to sign up for our newsletter, go to wbur.org/cooked, and I recommend it. It's very cool. Also, special thanks to our co-producers on this event, Grist's Solutions Lab, Fix. Fix is, yes, go ahead. We have some Solutions Lab people here from Fix. It's dedicated to exploring creative ways to shift the climate narrative toward possibility. Now, we're here to talk about eating local. But as you'll soon hear, that's just scratching the surface. New England once grew most of its own food. Today, the region imports about 90% of what we eat. Yeah, the global pandemic exposed the region's need for more self-sufficiency and resilience and equitable access to food. Joining us on our panel is an excellent group of folks. Tamika Francis, she's the founder and chief chef at Food and Folklore. Joy Gary, executive director of the Boston Farms Community Land Trust. And Tamar Haspel, she's Washington Post columnist and author of To Boldly Grow, Finding Joy, Adventure, and Dinner in Your Own Backyard. And be sure to pick up a copy of Tamar's book via our partners at Brookline Booksmith out in the farmers market, where Tamar will also be signing copies after the discussion. And as you see, in the second half of our program, we have a special demonstration for you, which I'm also very excited about. Learn practical skills you can take home, led by Quontay Turner. She's the owner of Emerald City Plant Shop, also a table out there. Stop by, and as a special gift to everybody here, you can take home what they're going to be planting on stage. So you're going to get a free gift. You're going to learn and plant today. Okay, so leading us on our delicious and sustainable journey today is WBUR environmental correspondent Barbara Moran. Please help me giving a warm welcome to them all.
My first live event since before the pandemic, and I came up the stairs without falling. So far, so good.
Now, as soon as the earplug is in, we're good to go.
I know, right?
For the first event.
This is like NASA level technology here. It's a little beyond me. All right, we're good. Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are here to talk about food. It's very exciting. So I should warn you all that I am a climate reporter and not a food reporter. So a lot of this research I've been doing is very new to me, and I've learned a lot. And I'm excited to learn more tonight about local food. So I looked up a stat this morning that I wanted to raise for you guys. And it said, according to Food Solutions New England, which is a group you are most familiar with, about 10% of the food eaten in New England is grown in New England. It's only 10%. And there's a goal to increase that to 50% by mid-century. I'm like, well, that sounds good, 50% local food. But then I'm thinking, like, is that good? Like, why? Like, local food seems like a good thing, but why is it a good thing? So I thought we'd start off there, and you could each talk a little bit about why local food, having more local food is good.
Yeah.
You can go first, Joy.
Yeah, I can start off. Yeah, I think local food is good because one, you're able to get the amount of nutrients that you're actually needing. So if food is produced in scale, in mass, internationally, and then shipped to you, the level of nutrition that you're needing to be able to have all of your body systems functioning is dramatically reduced. And so we see that in the case of the flavor of the food, a lot of times the store-bought food is not tasting the same as what you get at a farmer's market or directly from a farmer or growing in your own backyard. So I think nutrition is one of the major things, but one of the drivers for people is the flavor that you get in the food.
Interesting. How about you? Tamar, you're the hyper-local, micro-local lady.
I am hyper-local. and I think that the local that I am, which is getting it with your own two hands, has some of the advantages that I think local food in general has, because there are great things about having farms in your community that have really nothing to do with necessarily food security or resiliency. I think it's wonderful to have open spaces. It's wonderful to support local economies. It's great to have a place where a kid can meet a pig, and maybe an adult too. No, seriously. And it's a constant...
Just like picturing, I'm still stuck on this for a second. Okay, but go ahead. All right, come onward.
And now you made me lose my chance.
That's all right. Meeting pigs, after you meet the pig.
After meeting the pigs. And I think that farmers markets can be community touchstones. I mean, who among us hasn't looked forward to, putting on our Birkenstocks and going to the farmers market? And I think that as we have gotten away from the source of our food, we have also gotten away from the community aspects of food. And the reason I'm a big fan of it is because it brings some of that back. And it's a reminder that food has to come from somewhere. And we tend to forget that when we don't see it at its source.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add, I heard nutrition, the economy, the culture piece, but I think food sovereignty, just knowing that you have ownership over what goes into your body, and sovereignty in terms of people are from different backgrounds and cultures, and so your local food may look and sound different from different persons. So knowing that it's grown locally at Callaloo, for example, or anything that's really important to your diet, having autonomy or having access to that in a local setting, I think really makes you feel like you belong to your food system versus waiting for the middleman and 3 versions of a system to get that food to you. So your sovereignty and your connection to your food, I think, is also important in terms of local food.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up and ask Joy about some of the work you're doing down in Mattapan and Dorchester with that. Before I do that, for the audience, if you have questions for our panel, you can go onto your phone and ask. You go to Slido or slid.do, and you can enter Eat Local and ask questions for our audience on there, and they'll show up here, and then I can ask the it's amazing, this technology. All right, sorry, go ahead. Tell me about what you're doing to make this happen.
Yeah, so I'm the executive director for Boston Farms Community Land Trust, and we're an organization that's really trying to preserve land for farmers of color in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. So there's lots of vacant lots all around the city that are either derelict or just not being used, and so we take that property, develop it into a sustainable space for farmers to be able to grow food on, and then we provide assistance in a number of different ways to support farmers and being able to have some self-agency in growing their own food and food sovereignty for the community, but also being able to create viable businesses to support them and their families.
That's amazing. We were talking before about how much it costs to turn a vacant lot into a viable farm. Can you talk about, because I guess there's this sense like, well, you've got a vacant lot, you just plow it and put some seeds on.
Yeah, well, because a lot of the properties that are vacant and around the city were originally housing lots, and there's lead levels that were high and paint and all different types of toxins in the soil. We have to truck in soil in order to be able to grow. So it gets capped off. We truck in some really good soil from Vermont Compost and some local stuff, and but we also some of the other costs, or one major cost, is just to hook up the water. So it's about $20,000 just to get the water connection for most of the properties, and that's kind of a lowball figure for many of the properties. And so that's one of the reasons why it's been so cost prohibitive for farmers being able to get access to the land. It's because they can't develop it at the beginning. So
Wow.
we cover that for them so that they can be able to just use the land.
Interesting. So you all are involved in the food movement and local food in different ways. And can you talk a little, each of you, about how you've seen things change during the pandemic? And has that sort of created more urgency around food and food, the need for local food or anything like that, or a desire among people to grow their own food? Have you seen either of those things happen? Who wants to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can start. Yeah, yes, definitely. We've had a number of farmers being even more interested in learning, or individuals learning about becoming farmers. So our organization is connected with the Urban Farming Institute, which is one of the sole institutes in Boston creating farmers and teaching them about how to farm. And so people have been going there and learning about farming, and the enrollment rate has increased quite a bit. But just in talking to farmers, there's lots of people trying to volunteer. The access for seeds has been lower because so many people all across the country have been trying to get the same small amount of seeds that are available. So,
Wow.
So there's, the access to tools have also have been varied. So yeah, it's been good in some ways, and then it's also put a lot of pressure on some of the systems to be able to get food to people.
That's crazy. I hadn't thought about seed shortages.
Yeah.
Huh. What about you guys? Anything you see?
Well, I think that to dovetail with what Joy said about farmers, people growing food for other people are interested in growing it for themselves. People have been leaving the cities, and a lot of people are having their first yard in a long time. And when you have a yard, the next question is, what can I grow? And people get reintroduced to the idea that you can put a seed in the ground and grow something to eat. Reintroduced to the idea that food comes from plants and animals, reintroduced to the wide variety of insects that will eat your food before you do. and I think that has contributed to the seed issue also, that there was a huge run on seeds the first COVID spring. And I think, now people are getting used to it, but absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm also in the food and entrepreneurship space. So usually in culinary classes and conversations about foods, I think cooking as well. There's been an uptick in folks wanting to understand and how to cook their own food. The restaurant industry was somewhat closed down during the early days of COVID. And so I think more families were home for the first time and wanting to understand making their own meals and being more intentional about the food they're making. And therefore, that then led them to explore or ask questions about where that food came from anyway. So there's an uptick in folks just learning how to cook, in exploring the food sources, and then really tapping them into that bigger food system as well.
Interesting. I have an audience question coming in about local food, and how does local food help reduce carbon emissions or help with climate change, or does it? And how does it help with economic inequality? We'll start with you, Tamika.
Sure, of course.
Oh, is that okay?
I mean, my experience.
I'm sorry, because you have a background in environmental science.
A long time ago. My experience with agriculture, to be fair, is outside the U.S. context. So I'm from Jamaica, worked in agriculture in the Caribbean, and so I was more accustomed to what we call permaculture here. So not larger scale agricultural systems, but systems that were more based on permaculture. So the systems spoke to each other. They were more ecologically friendly.
Can you just explain what permaculture is for people who might not be familiar with it?
Sure, I'll give a stab at it. So really growing food in accordance or in harmony with the environment. So matching plants or systems to based on what grows best in that area. I think Joy probably knows this more than I do. What grows best in an area based on the climate, based on the soil type, but also matching plants to balance each other. So the Three Sisters, which is I think one of the most popular ones from the Native Americans, corn and peas that really have a nutrient fixing, so they're able to grow more easily in a system. So modeling the environment versus doing monocropping, which is just one corn only or beans only, but really balancing the environment based on what happens in nature.
It would seem, though, I mean, I've heard the argument that sort of growing a monocrop, like just growing corn or just growing wheat is, look at that face, monocrop face, is more efficient.
Yes.
Right? And perhaps uses less greenhouse gases. And that this sort of, the permaculture does good things for the soil, but I don't know. So is that a fair argument? Or what, I guess when we're thinking about the climate change issues, how does local fit into that? I guess is my question.
It's a pretty big question. I mean, urban farms, the work we do here won't feed our country or feed a city, right? It's more so for environmental factors, but also for social factors. But monocropping came about because we had to grow food in large scale to feed our country. But I do think we've gone so far that we no longer even respect the soil, and the soil is just a barren place that we just keep growing each year. So has to be a balance between urban, hyper-local, and then large-scale monocropping.
Yeah.
So I think Tamika gave a couple of examples that indicate that the answer to that question writ large, is local food better for the climate, is a resounding, it depends, like so many other issues in food. And I think the sort of intuitive understanding of it is that, okay, well, this food isn't traveling very far, so its carbon footprint must be lower because of transport. But the reality is, and in my day job, I'm a Washington Post columnist, and I'm a hard-ass empiricist, and the intersection of food and science is sort of where I live. And you spend time with the data, and you see that overall, transport is only 5 to 10% of the greenhouse gas impact of a food. So if you can grow it efficiently, even in California, which is so far away, it may be that the greenhouse gas component of your food's impact is going to be lower from that food. But it's all trade-offs all the time. And so just because this particular arugula may have a lower impact if it comes from California, there are all of these other things about how it was grown, whether the farm workers are paid a living wage, whether people can connect to the farmer who grows it. And some of these are tangible and some of them are not tangible. And so I think it's important to not say, okay, well, local food is great for these reasons, so it must be great for all the reasons. And there's no food that delivers on that. So it's all complicated, it's all context dependent, and it all comes down to what you value and what you're looking to reflect when you make dietary choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I don't know that there's much that I can add to that. I think one of the things that is the value of local food systems, particularly in the Northeast and smaller farms, urban farms, is the efficiency, the learning how to deal with small spaces and produce massive amounts of food. Many farms in Boston, Revision Urban Farm, Eastie Farm, they're producing upwards of 20,000 pounds of food per year on a very, very small space, which when you're comparing that to lots of the farms that are in the Midwest, it's not comparable at all per acre how much food can be produced. So I think that local food systems or local farms are an example of how we could expand efficiencies in our food system throughout the country.
I also think urban farms have these other climate benefits, like helping with the urban heat effects,
Yes.
and I heard somebody snap, urban heat. Dealing with stormwater, flooding, those type of things. So I think there's those. It is really hard to sort of calculate all the benefits.
All of the benefits, yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Right. I wanted to ask you each to tell some, just because you're also like super interesting and have these interesting food backgrounds. And I was wondering if you have a favorite sort of local food story for yourself, like a local food discovery. I'm going to start with you, Tamar, because you have so many, but like one of your favorite things that you grew or harvested or was just like a revelation to you.
You're not going to make me tell the story about when we made the chicken plucker out of the washing machine.
No, I like that, but that is a good story, but I think we got to.
I'm going to say, and my husband and I have spent the last 10, 15 years getting food with our own two hands every which way from Sunday. And I have to say that one of the most surprising well, it wasn't surprising. What was surprising was that it wasn't surprising, and it was still so compelling, was when we made our own sea salt.
Yes, that story was amazing. Yes, that was amazing.
So it's winter, right? And we have our wood stove on, and like everybody else, we have a cast iron thing with the lattice top and the little tendrils of water coming out to humidify the house. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, honey, what would happen if we put seawater in there? And Kevin goes, well, it would evaporate. And I said, well, wouldn't we be left with sea salt? And he said, so we're going to drive the truck to the beach. We're going to fill some big vessel with seawater. We're going to keep refilling this. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have, what, 7 cents worth of salt?
Yes.
And I said, yeah. And so we drove to the beach, and I waited out there with a giant pot. And we kept refilling it. And I did the math. Seawater is 3.5% salt, and we were going to get a reasonable amount of salt. And then by the time we got to the point where it had gotten down and the salt was beginning to precipitate out, we knew exactly what was happening. We all took junior high school chemistry, and we stood over it just fascinated. It's evaporation. It is exactly the same process by which paint dries. And we are standing over it and just gazing at it and waiting for the salt to emerge. And it did. And it was this beautiful pile of snowy white salt, and it was the most mundane little miracle that we experienced in food.
That is, I mean, and you pay, how much you pay for like sea salt? Those little
Oh, we thought about
things?
selling it. In cute little containers.
I know, right? All right, how about you?
Yeah, I think some of my favorite experiences on the farm were helping people in their discovery of food. This was a number of years ago, but I was leading a project with helping third and fourth graders grow food in different gardens around the city, and they would harvest the food during one week, and then we would go into the kitchen and make everything up into different meals, and they would go home with a little booklet of recipes to be able to take home to their parents. So while we were fixing food, we're sitting down at the table, and one of the vegetables that we were going to cook was peas and sugar snap peas. And most of the kids did not like peas at all. And they're like, no, like, I'm not going to eat this. Get this off of my plate. And I said, listen, just open up the pod and taste it. And taste one of the little peas. And they tasted it and said, oh my goodness, it tastes like corn. And so they were so excited, and their faces were lighting up. And you know, I think it seems like a mundane thing, but for them to be able to see the flavors kind of burst in their mouth and see a different side of food that they hadn't before, walking them through that whole process of harvesting and growing the food and then tasting it and having a different realization of the food was powerful for me, and I hope it also stuck with them.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So for me, it's the month of June, so it's strawberry season in New England. And I'm foreign born. I moved here in my 20s. So the only strawberries I've ever had were the hard type from the supermarket. I thought they're supposed to be hard and somewhat
an apple.
crunchy. And so a few years ago, we ran this organization called The Move, where we take urban kids out to farms. And it was Drummond Farm. It was the middle of June. We were harvesting strawberries. And I remember biting into I picked like a strawberry for the first time. I had tears. I had no idea it was supposed to be that juicy and soft, and that just completely changed so I no longer buy strawberries until June, but it completely just changed my idea of what local tasted like. And for me, the youth were just asking, who picked this? It's so expensive. And we started to talk about like the fact that a person in California, for example, a migrant worker, was getting paid $1 a day for this amazing thing. At the same time, we're harvesting them at the wrong season. So it was like a real big conversation about the taste of local produce, who picks this produce, and why seasonality was so important. So I wait my turn to have great strawberries then. But
That's wonderful.
yeah.
We're going to learn about strawberries during our planting demo, which is going to be great. We have another question from the audience. What are the most important questions we should be all asking farmers or grocers about where our food comes from before we buy it? So next time you go to the farmer's market, is there something you should ask people? Or should we go ask questions at the grocery store?
I'm going to take that.
Oh, all right.
Because the thing about a lot of growing food and trying to distinguish the well-grown food from the not well-grown food is that, and it's maddening, you have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
My husband and I have an oyster farm, and oysters are, the darling of sustainable agriculture because they make the water better. But we can tell you who has good practices and who doesn't have good practices down in the flats where we have our farm. We can tell you who's got density that could be a hotbed of disease. We can tell you who's trying to scam, the federal insurance program. We can tell you, who kicks his dog, and we probably won't, but we do have those conversations with the authorities on that, and so there is a lot that is known that consumers don't know. And that's what's so difficult. None of the labels that go on food tell you about, whether this is prudently and ecologically farmed by a farmer who's paying attention to all the right things. And so, unfortunately, there are not a lot of good questions that you can ask.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
but geez.
Yeah, I know. I'm raining on everybody's parade.
I wonder if you ask any questions, then it's people, I don't know, grocers will realize that you're paying attention. I wonder if there's power in just asking the questions.
It's a good point. And one of the best things about people paying attention is that the attention.
Yeah.
And I think in the last 15 years, don't you think a lot of more people are paying attention to the provenance of their food? Is that your experience also? And people respond to that. I know a lot of farmers, even of those big farms in the Midwest that are thousands of acres, who are opening their farms to people who are curious about it. And of course, it's the best farmers who do this. And it's interesting and it's educational, and I'm delighted that people are paying attention to the source of their food. But the interest is not commensurate with the amount of information that's out there, because you just don't know a lot.
Interesting.
I think I'd add that, sustainability includes people as well. So the ecology is important, and you can have those conversations, but speaking to or asking questions about the labor on that farm, how are they being treated, who are they? Very many times the very labor on a farm can't afford to buy the produce at the farmer's market, so really thinking through a whole system where your labor, is migrant labor, out of the Caribbean or elsewhere, is being treated well, or even local folks can afford to then consume or purchase what's being produced locally. So really thinking through sustainability is ecology, but it's also the land and the labor behind it. So having some social justice lens, I think, is also important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think, to piggyback off of that, I think there is an element of just being able to build relationships with the farmers themselves, because I think there's a little bit more transparency when you're having more discussions with them and asking them, hey, can I come to your farm? And how do you ask? You can ask them about their growing practices, whether or not they're forthright or if they're being honest. That's another thing. But you can kind of check that if you're able to visit their farms. And I think this goes to our personal responsibility around policy change, and we need for there to be more transparency in food and how it's produced. And once we have more transparency, we can have more reliance on that we're getting good food.
Yeah, yeah. Another audience question, we'll stay with you, Joy, is how is Boston set up or not set up to support local food? Oh,
yeah.
right. Right.
Yeah, there's many challenges with Boston. I think just transportation in general is a transporting yourself is a challenge. So of course, being able to transport food all across the city is a challenge. I think in one way we're able to set up and create systems for local food by Article 89 being set up, and by Article 89, which was a Article 89 was a rezoning guideline that allows for urban farming, and that was instituted in 2013. And so it allowed a lot more urban farms to be able to be built in and around Boston, even though urban farming has been happening around 40 years in the city. But having that instituted allowed for there to be a department set up so that there's more access to funding, but getting the land into the hands of individuals is where it's been a challenge, and that's why our organization exists. Because of the transference of land to individuals, the prohibitive nature of the cost of land has made it very challenging to be able to produce within the city. In addition to being able to have the infrastructure, we do not have a sustainable infrastructure for housing and cooling food and transporting that, and there's a whole host of issues there. And I think the current administration is thinking about that, but we have a lot of work that needs to be done.
Tamika, do you have anything you want to add to that? No. Another audience question. Besides local farmers markets, how can individuals working with a very low income purchase food? They usually buy what they can afford, and it's not the best.
I do have something to add. I mean, we talk about the policies. I think Boston has done, I'm a little biased, a really good job of having programs to incentivize buying local food. So there's HIP, the Healthy Incentives Programs. There's various programs. I mean, they don't meet all your needs, but there are incentives, double bucks. For example, if you purchase, say, $20 or so of local produce, that's matched up to a certain amount. So, and that's seasonal, so May through October, give or take. There are a few markets that are open a little bit past the October season, but there are opportunities, I think, in the farmers market sector for folks to use benefits, whether it's SNAP or EBT or otherwise, to then purchase local food and then be incentivized to continue doing that. So that's a really good one.
Is that common? Do you know, like within the United States?
Yeah, there are a lot of cities and places where they double SNAP dollars at farmers markets, and there are a lot of programs that are trying to bring affordable local produce into the most underserved communities. I'm familiar with a few in DC. And yeah, it has been an area where there's been a lot of work, and of course there's always more to do.
And those started mostly in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, actually, as one of the first. It's called Berkshire Bucks back in the day. Berkshire Bucks, right? So they started this idea of, if you're in Western Massachusetts in the Berkshires with access to amazing produce, but you can't afford to do so, they incentivize farmers to then offer this to low-income folks. Then Boston started the program, and other cities have done the same.
And Boston has, at least the past couple of years, instituted different coupon programs so that if you go to specific farmers markets, you can use those coupons, and it can be anywhere from $10 to $75 each time that you're going. And I think connecting with neighborhood groups and institutions, because a lot of them were getting those coupons, I think that's really helpful. So connecting not just in this food sphere, but just any of the spheres of like social equity, they would have some access to resources.
Yeah, that's great. And two more. So UFI, I'm on the board, so to just say that they've been giving away
Urban Farm
Institute. So last year and the year before, they just gave away their produce.
Yeah.
Like there was just no barrier to entry, just have produce for no cost. And the trustees, I believe, have the urban gardens. So if you do have time, right, that's a balance of low income, and then you also may not have time. You can then have your own garden plot and grow your food, and have that for your own sake.
So there's an audience question, and I'm just going to follow up on that, because So the Urban Farm Institute can give away produce because I guess they're a nonprofit, right? And they must be getting grant money from somewhere, right? So this audience question is, can we realistically create a local agriculture system that is really local and supports our needs? You know, because I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Are there for-profit farms that make a profit?
Yeah,
Quickly?
I got
Okay,
one.
oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, good.
But I think, when we talk about sustainable food, sustainability is so many things.
Yeah.
And, one of them is environmental, one of them is economic.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that has to happen for a food system to be sustainable is that farmers have to make a living.
Right.
It's great that there are nonprofit players stepping in, but farming has to be a viable way to have a career. And I know so many young people who almost feel called to it, and it's so difficult for them to get in. And I think the government is trying to take some steps to help young farmers get in. But the reality in a place like the Northeast is that land is really expensive. There's not a lot of it going begging. And I think that there are definitely places regionally that we can have dairy and ruminants, because there's a lot of grass, but there's not a lot of great acreage for row crops. There's some. So there's some things that we could grow really well in the Northeast. And it makes sense for us to do that well. And then, some of that is going to leave the Northeast in return for some other things coming into the Northeast. And it's always going to be a mix. And you have to play to your region's strengths. And I think increasingly farmers are trying to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's important that it has to be a regional process. It can't be individual farms. It can't be just one community. It has to be across community lines because otherwise we would not even have the land base to be able to grow the level of food that is needed to be able to sustain us, because there's just not enough.
Yeah, but just to add 2 points, we're doing amazing work, yes, but I do think the matching of low-income subsidies with a population that's farmers who aren't making that much anyway, that's a mismatch, right? Because you have the most farmer population, and they're looking for food resources, and you're matching these benefits with folks who are barely making their margins. So that's a mismatch. We're still doing it. We continue to do it, but I do think that farmers often are doing this double bucks, for example, with very little benefit to them in terms of their economy. And the other point, in terms of land, in urban settings, we have all these programs, but then there is so much land across New England that's owned by families who've always owned this. There are very many families like mine or Joy's who may not ever own this land. So just thinking about how you redistribute land and who gets to own access to land, I think that's also a conversation.
And I think some of the things that you were talking about visiting your local farms, I think one of the advantages of having farms locally is that people see how much damn work it is.
Yeah, seriously.
And maybe understand how astonishing it is that we can walk into a supermarket and have access to so much food that's so inexpensive that has sort of, I think, reset our expectation of what food should cost.
Yeah.
Well, all the
it's
time.
very difficult.
That's the confusing part when I just moved to America. Everything's available all the time. There's no season for things. So that was, I think, when you said also we're offering this ideal that there's nothing behind creating this wonderful bounty.
Yeah, right. Especially it's also clean too.
Clean, pristine, perfect.
Yeah.
Right under the light.
We have time for one more question before we go learn how to plant things. So just, I think we've talked a lot about how the food system is so complex. Tamar says there's no good question to ask, but if somebody wants to go and be more mindful about the food they're eating, what's one thing they should be thinking about, going out there? Or what do you think about when you're deciding what to eat? Look at Tamika, I'm looking at you first. Oh, do you not want to go first?
I'm gonna be honest. I think about taste first. I'm just being honest.
Okay.
I think about taste first. Everything in moderation, even moderations. I think we're being conscious of labor, the land, the input, but also just being mindful. I mean, you'll never probably every day be a good climate justice advocate, but maybe 5 of 7 days, you kind of think about if you're sourcing locally, think about how you're eating. Perhaps this is a hot topic. Meat consumption, there's that big conversation. There's never like a push to go vegan, but just be mindful of what parts of our food system may take more than others. Waste, food waste, food waste, right? So being mindful of leftovers, being mindful about how we reshuffle our food, réchauffer, the French say. I think there's so much food waste, so it's food that's post-production, it's already produced, it's here. Let's think about not wasting that. So I think it's just balancing all those pieces on a good day. But I do think you should lean in the middle and be balanced.
What was the French word?
Réchauffer, I think I'm butchering
And what does
French.
that mean?
To reheat? Somebody Google that. Réchauffer, right? To reheat.
Very heat, huh? All right. What are you going to leave the audience with?
It's so hard, and I think you have to find the thing you care about because there's so many different aspects of this. If you care about climate, yeah, you eat less meat. If you care about monocultures, stay away from the things that have the corn and soy that are grown in the Midwest. My thing, I think, is animal welfare. I care a lot about that. So I try and source my animal foods from places where I do know something about how the animals are grown. But the thing is that there's so much that we can care about. And to some extent, maybe we should care about it. But food also has to be this joyful, delicious thing that you feed your families. And I don't ever want concern about these things to overshadow what's celebratory and joyful and delicious about food. So whatever it is that you care about, zero in on that, but don't forget to eat delicious things.
Yeah. Good. All right. I like how this is going. All right.
I think I have 2 points. One is if you have land or if you have a lawn or access to land and you don't want to be a grower, not everyone wants to garden, not everyone has time to garden, find someone who wants to garden or farm on that land. You can either give it, let them utilize it for free or lease it to them. And it can be a really great opportunity. There's a number of farmers around the country that are farming on other people's land. And you don't have to have a very large space in order to do it. It's just a collective of people allowing their land to be utilized, and it's for the larger good. The other thing is, along with tasting and exploring food, I think that try foods that you don't normally try. A lot of farmers are being forced to grow all of the same things, which causes pest pressure and sometimes meaning that we won't have that vegetable anymore because we're all eating the same few plant families. So explore your food options. There's a whole host of vegetables that we are not eating on a regular basis that can be grown and in this climate and are delicious. So yeah.
That was wonderful. I love wrapping up on this idea of eating more food. Woohoo! I can do that, no problem. All right. Thank you, everybody. Round of applause for our panelists. Joy Gary, I'm going to say their names right, Executive Director of the Boston Farms Community Land Trust. Tamar Haspel, Washington Post columnist and author of To Boldly Grow, Finding Joy, Adventure, and Dinner in Your Own Backyard. There's going to be signed books out there to learn about sea salt. And Tamika Francis, founder, chief chef, I can't even say that, chief chef and bottle washer at Food and Folklore. Thank you all very much. Okay. Are you guys going to stay up here for the thing? Yeah.
I want a better view.
Yeah. All right. All right. We're going to do a swapper over here. Okay. Welcome, Quontay. All right. Quontay Turner is going to come up and show me how to plant things. Over here, I think I could take this Secret Service thing out of my ear. All right. Here we go. You guys coming up? Tomorrow's like, what do I do? What do I do? What do we do?
What do we do?
All right.
I want to be able to see what you did.
All right. Is this camera thing?
All right, we're on, we're live. Hello,
I'm
everyone.
gonna be blocking the camera. Hello.
Oh, yes, we're,
Like I don't
we're
want them
live.
like lurking over. Oh, there we go. Look at that.
Oh,
All right,
awesome.
okay, cool. Okay.
So we learned a lot about where to grow, well, how to grow your food or where to grow your food, but we're gonna focus on if you have a seed, right? Those that are in the Boston area, I believe the Boston Public Library is still doing a seed program where they're giving out free seeds. So again, if you have land and you do have time to grow, definitely reach out to them and get some seeds. So we have right here actually 2 peach pits that I ate yesterday.
Did you just eat those?
Yes, I did. So the thing about food is that we all, for the most part here, have a fridge full of food at home. Vegetables, fruits, anything. So most fruits have seeds that you can then germinate and then grow food. So you don't even necessarily have to go on the search for seeds, just regenerating the food that we're already consuming. So we're gonna do my favorite way of germinating a seed in the easiest way, by my own expertise, is the paper towel method. So ideally,
So you were talking about this before when I was asking you about avocado pits and my
Yes.
endless disappointment. Because I'm always doing this avocado pit thing with a toothpick on the glass and then it just gets moldy and nothing.
yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So in my early plant journey, I would try to do that and I would fail miserably every time. And then I stumbled upon, it was like a little video. And basically you're gonna take a paper towel, you're gonna mist it. It doesn't need to be like super damp, just a little moist. Ideally, you want to let this kind of dry out and all this like fruit matter kind of dissipate so you have a clean seed, but I ate it yesterday. So we're going to work with what we got.
And does this work with any kind of pit
Any
or
pit,
stone? Is
any
that what they're called?
seed, stone, corn, there's a million and one names for seeds. But anything that can grow into something, this can work for. So what you're going to do is you're going to mist your paper towel and then you're just going to fold it up and roll it up.
I can do this. All right. This is within my.
And
my
then
abilities.
you get your plastic bag.
Did you put water in there beforehand in the plastic bag?
This was it was just wet before. So as long as your paper towel is moist, that'll be enough moisture to do what it needs to do. And then you seal it up and get ready for this. My favorite place to put my seeds is underneath my couch. So you want something dark and warm to kind of simulate being buried in dirt and then the sun kind of baking. So you roll this up, put it under your couch. You can put it in the back of a closet. And then in 2 weeks or so, it will have sprouted.
Don't forget about it.
Yes, well, if you forget about it, I've definitely been in the situation where I forgot that I had a couch full of avocado pits, and then I was like, oh, let me see, and they were like growing out of the paper towel. So the longer you wait, the better. So that is a foolproof way of germinating any type of seed or pit that you might have normally.
Okay, wait. So you put this under your couch with all the other pits for 2 weeks, and then when you take it out, it's what?
So it has started growing roots,
Okay.
and then from there, we're actually going to.
This is the fanciest dirt ever. Can we show everybody this dirt? It's like single
Yes.
origin coffee dirt.
Yes. So this is dirt that is actually local. So I live in Norwood. Emerald City Plant Shop is based in Norwood, and Norwood has an amazing recycle center. So you can get rid of all your plastics, all your cardboard, but you can also get rid of all of your like debris and dead bushes, and then pick up fresh compost. So this is compost that I dropped off and then picked up, and then we
Is that like
mix
just a
it.
free town service?
It's a free
That's
town
awesome.
service. You know, we pay our taxes in the town, and that's what they do with the taxes over there. So, I don't recommend anyone planting anything directly into straight compost. So in this bag, you'll see kind of wood chips and little white dots. This is perlite. So these are all things that'll make your mix chunky. If you ever go to, so if you ever kind of like try to ball up your soil and it stays in that ball form, it is too dense to plant things in. Roots need to be covered in soil and nutrients to grow, but they also need air to breathe. So if your soil is too dense, you're going to choke out your plants. So make sure that whatever soil you're creating, we mix our soil in-house. I kind of think of creating soil mixes as like cooking, so whatever speaks to your spirit. As long as it's not that super, super dense, the more area it is, the more it'll breathe. Now keep in mind, the more area it is, the faster it'll dry out. So you want to find, again, that key word is balance here. So what we're going to do is, ideally, once you have your sprouted seed, you're going to fill in or go out in your yard.
Get the world's tiniest pot.
The world's tiniest pot. Now, there's a reason why this pot is so tiny. So this is our seed. And then the original way is that you kind of just put a seed in the dirt and then hope for the best. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in that process, which is why I prefer to kind of germinate my seed and get it sprouted in the plastic bag first and then transplant it to soil. So we're just going to pretend that this guy has his roots sprouted. With any of the pits, they usually sprout on one end, and so you want to face the end down with the roots and then the other end up, because that's where your tree or your plant will grow. So you're then going to put it down and then just going to cover it in with soil. So I do not have a lot of land to grow outside, so anything that I grow is going to be in pots. The reason why this pot is so small is because if you're not planting directly outside in the field, plants kind of behave differently when they're in containers. So you don't want to give a plant too much space, because then it can kind of get lost in the sauce, if you will. Watering this seed, if it was in a container this size, the water could go past it. It might dry out faster than the container dries out. So you really want to kind of give your seed an incrementally bigger spot as it grows. So we're going to look and see what a plant looks like. This is not an edible plant. Please do not eat a snake plant. But we're going to look to see what a plant starts to look like when it starts to get root bound and it needs a bigger home. So you can already
Root what?
root bound.
Root bound.
Yeah. So basically, imagine you being forced to wear the same jeans that you wore when you were 10. Right? You need to give yourself some room to grow. So these plants need bigger homes to grow.
Pants bound.
So I can already tell this plant is root bound because its roots are actually coming out the top of the soil.
Help me, give me space.
Yes, but usually I always suggest planting, if you're planting in containers, planters that have drainage holes. So that means you can see holes and space for the roots to breathe in the bottom. If you don't have holes, there's no way for the water to escape, and then essentially just drowning your plants. But this is what a plant will start to look like when it's root bound. See, this guy was just coming out the side, no soil on this side, so it really needs a bigger home. So when you're repotting your plants, you want to get rid of all that arid soil. See how this soil is like so light compared to this like really nutrient-rich soil? This is what old soil looks like. So I always suggest people to repot their plants every 1 to 2 years. If you're not repotting your plants in that time frame, you're really doing a disservice to the plant.
So you take all the soil off like that?
Yep.
It's not just gonna like fall apart?
So everything that's falling off is things that need to be gotten rid of anyway. So this is all. You can see how easily it just falls apart. This also needed to be watered, so that's also that reason too. So once you have your plant free of all of its old soil that no longer has any nutrients, you're gonna get a new pot, and this one does have a drainage hole. And then you're just gonna put a couple inches of soil on the bottom so that there's room for the roots to grow down.
I feel like sometimes when I do this with plants, they freak out. Like I have like plant shock and then they die.
Yes, so a word of caution. Anytime you are removing a plant from its original home, there's a chance that it might not like its new home. Just like with propagation. So propagation is when you basically take your plant and multiply it. For the snake plant, you can cut a piece of the top off and then put it in water, and it'll literally grow roots off the top and then start another shoot like this. Or you can just propagate it
no, I don't want to go.
I heard all the oohs, ahs. And then you can just propagate it like this.
Wow.
So this is just another new baby that this plant is. So this is a mother plant now. It just had a baby. And so you can repot this into another container. We're actually going to repot that one in there. And then this one, I'm going to situate it in there just so. And then we're just going to fill in the soil all around it. It's really not.
Is there anything extra special you do to make it like its new home better?
So the area your soil is, the better chances it's going to take. But really the key in making sure your plant is happy after it being transplanted into a new home is the light. Whenever you're dealing with a struggling plant, my suggestion is always to give it more light. All of the plants that you see outside on the table in spaces as you walk through life have been genetically modified to be able to sustain being inside up here. So the more light you can give them, the more you're actually giving them kind of back to their natural environment.
Interesting.
Now, growing food, a lot of people will come into the shop and say, oh, I have a basil plant that's not doing well, or oh, I have a lemon tree that's not really doing well. And the challenge for us is that those are not local foods to us, for the most part, or they're very seasonal. So if you want to grow food, you really want to put them outside. The more light you give them, the better. Everyone here is going to be walking away with a little strawberry plant that you can grow. Strawberries are actually great plants that you can grow in containers. And so what you'll want to do if you do not have any outdoor space, make sure that you're putting it in the brightest possible light. It's really hard to tell what type of light is the best light just by the naked eye, but if everyone pulls out their phone, I think most phones have a compass on them now, figure out which direction your windows are facing because that will tell you what type of light you have. South is king. It's bright, direct light all day pretty much. Then it goes west because afternoon light is way more intense than early morning light. And then east, and then unfortunately, if you have just north-facing windows, your best bet is to kind of stick with more lower light plants like snake plants, like ZZ plants, just because there's not enough exposure to really sustain anything else. So when you have a struggling plant, make sure you're just giving it a lot of light. And if you're giving it a lot of light, be mindful that you'll probably have to water it more often just because it's using more energy.
Interesting. Oh, good. I was hoping you'd give the baby.
Yes, so we got to get the baby all settled. But I wanted to kind of go over also just other really good, easy food plants that you can regenerate at home without any space. Let's get this baby all settled before we
don't
move
want
on.
to just leave the baby there. All kinds of, look at all this stuff in here.
Oh yeah, this is real Norwood soil. And then also don't be afraid to press down on the soil, especially because they're just freshly transplanted. They kind of need a little bit more stability. So don't feel like you have to be too careful with them. They're really resilient.
So in the minute we have left here, can you tell us about this pineapple thing
Yes.
growing over here?
So.
Oh, there's more stuff hidden behind her.
Oh yeah. So this is pineapple I picked up at Wegmans the other day. I ate the flesh. If you are interested, you can also boil the skins of pineapples. It releases a compound that's really great for boosting your immune system. So I boiled the pineapple skins, put a little lime, put a little ginger in there, and then add that to some seltzer water. So using all of the pineapple, you could definitely help kind of reduce your waste that way. But if you have a pineapple, simply twist off the pineapple top and then peel away like the last couple of layers until you start to see like these little nodes. This one is, when did I buy this pineapple? Let's say Wednesday. I probably bought it like maybe 5 days ago. And so you want to put it in water, put it in bright light, and then until the roots get a bit about this long, then it's ready to be transplanted into soil.
How long did that take?
This one I probably bought maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So I have grow lights. Not all lights can grow plants. So if you're looking to kind of expand your green thumb, definitely get lights that are specific for growing. But essentially, once they grow these roots, you can plant them in soil. Now, these probably will not produce pineapples because they are just that generic pineapple. It's not an organic pineapple. So that's when we talk about kind of the quality of food that we're buying in the grocery stores. The ones that I would, if I was in the Caribbean and just picked a pineapple or a mango, I could plant that seed and it most likely will grow a mango tree that will bear fruit. But these, if they're kind of conventional store-bought pineapples, they probably will not bear fruit. However, you
I
will
thought you
have
were
a
going to say
pretty
to be
plant.
unhappy because it was in Boston. That's what I thought you were
Well,
going to say.
yes,
It's like,
I was going to
alright.
say, they are happy about 2 seconds up here before we need to expend all of our energy making sure they have humidity, light, moisture throughout the very cold, dry winters up here. So.
But this will turn into a nice little house plant, though.
Oh, this will be a beautiful house plant. It might surprise you and it could bear fruit, but chances are it just might not likely.
Oh my God! Well, I'm going to totally try that at home. I'm going to have avocado pits
Yes,
under my
avocado
couch, and, like
pits.
pineapple
Yep.
sprouts all over.
Also really good are celery, green onions. You basically just chop it, leave the butt, put the butt in water, and then they'll regenerate themselves.
Amazing. Okay, great. All right, now you're going to be out there too if people have questions for you after
Absolutely.
this, right? Okay, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you again to all of our panelists. That concludes the formal program. I think our guests are around. Candace is poking me. Oh, look, he's going to talk. Good, I don't have to talk anymore.
Oh my God, thanks. That was amazing. Quontay Turner, everyone.
Woo, Quontay!
I am totally going to put my seeds under the couch. That's amazing. She is the owner of Emerald City Plant Shop. Visit the shop. It's awesome. Special thanks to Tamika Francis and Joy Gary and Tamar Haspel.
All right, there you
Wonderful
go.
panel. And thank you to you all. Just a reminder about our newly launched newsletter, Cooked. It's all about the many things we talked about today and much more. Plus, again, food puns. All written by our moderator, Barbara Moran. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Sign up at WBUR.org/cooked and be sure to grab your strawberry plant, courtesy of Emerald City Plants, on the way out. To get your strawberry plant planted, do all the good things with strawberries, and enjoy the market. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.